Hey there, I'm Jackie Kilgore with Jackie Group at Compass Real Estate. I've been asked to talk to you today about staging. What's it look like? How's it work? Why is it important? We decorate our houses and we furnish our houses obviously for our own comfort and convenience. How we use spaces. You know, the best angle for television watching. Or we've got a twin bed that will only fit in a room a certain way to accommodate our children's toys. There's lots of reasons why people furnish their homes the way they do for optimal living, but when it comes to listing, that's the difference between living and listing. And we know that buyers who are looking for properties are swipers, right? They swipe until they see something that catches their eye. And so when you're marketing a property or you're preparing a property for market, it's key. Staging is key. How you use spaces, how spaces are defined, color pops, architectural styles are enhanced with staging. All of those efforts go to enhancing the marketing appeal of the property. And further, when somebody actually comes and does that tour and they walk through the house, it's quite compelling, because if we've brought in accessories and soft goods to enhance someone else's neutral furnishings, we can create a flavor or create a feel in a house just with those kinds of things. You know, sometimes we look at a house and we think, are there any shortcomings? Because sometimes shortcomings can be addressed with staging. An example would be, let's say a room is dark. If we bring in light linens and light artwork, we can lift the color palette in a room and just by changing light bulbs. So sometimes we're addressing a problem. We can take a space that maybe the flooring is dated or the wall color is, maybe on a more brown tone today. And again, by putting in artwork or rugs, it changes the look entirely. In terms of popular spaces, we all, great room is an overused term, but really that's where everybody lives, right? It's that kitchen living space. And if you look through decor magazines and if you watch HGTV, they're going to focus on those spaces because that gives the most utility in a house. So sometimes by bringing in staging items, we're giving some cohesiveness to those spaces. Because when we're photographing them in a wide realm typically, and we need them to feel integrated. Another area that's a real hot button right now is outdoor living. And so if a property has outdoor living, great, right? It's easily accessorized. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes we're bringing in big umbrellas. Sometimes we're creating the feel, or canopy. Sometimes we're creating the feel of outdoor living where it doesn't exist. Sometimes creating imagery for a prospective buyer and creating ideas for them or how they can use spaces can be accomplished with staging just by giving somebody the idea of it. There's a visceral response that somebody has when they're looking at houses and when something catches their eye. You could be walking through a car lot. You could be walking through Macy's and looking at dresses. We're all attracted to whatever we're attracted to. So our job is to take a property and look at it and say, what are the most attractive elements, obviously? And as I spoke to before, are there any crosses to bear? Are there any challenges that we need to address? And properly staging is everything from scale. Sometimes people's furnishings are underscaled for a space, and so it makes it feel small. By adding in pieces and adding larger rugs, all of a sudden a room grows exponentially. Also, how something is photographed, what angles we photograph it from. Like anything else, we're all masters now of angles. If we're all taking selfies and things like that, we know kind of where we look best. Same thing is true for spaces. So our job is to all these layers between the staging and the photography and how we capture and represent a property is always, again, in its best light. And creating those spaces that are attractive that make people want to linger is a big part of what staging can do. Sometimes we've got sometimes we'll have a property that feels a bit dated, right? It's the flooring and the wall color, those kinds of things. And we can give a fresh feel to it with more current furnishings, more current styling. Again, we're not changing anything materially, but it's representative of a house that feels different, right? Sometimes we'll go to a client's property that, as an example, maybe their style, their personal style, might be a little bit more specific than we think the audience for the property might be. And so sometimes toning things down is part of staging. We often, obviously with the client's cooperation, we're often removing personal items. I think that's probably pretty common. We're asking them to remove personal items, but it's what we replace with. And so we spend a fair amount of time creating a staging plan to start off with. What spaces are we going to focus on? What needs to be done? Do we have the inventory in stock? Do we need to procure anything? And ever occasionally we have other vendors that we bring in, whether it's large-scale furnishings or things like that that we don't keep in stock to help us along the way. So some properties are occupied. We've got residents in, and we might be decluttering, rearranging, working really with what they have, which is always fun. So people often come home and say, gosh, I would have never thought to do that. I enjoy that probably the most. So no staging project is the same. And we don't approach everyone the same. When you're assessing the property itself, you're looking for opportunities to make the most out of it. So sometimes we've got clients that are in residence, right? And we're going to work with what they have. Usually it starts with kind of depersonalizing those spaces and then assessing what needs to be brought in, rearranging the foundational items that they have, sofas and rugs and things like that, large-scale furnishings, and oftentimes bringing in art, accessories, and soft goods to really bring some punch to those spaces. So that's probably the most common. We've got somebody still living in their home. Sometimes we've got people that have homes that are underfurnished. They've already started culling out in preparation for the move. They never furnished the fourth bedroom. They didn't do anything with the game room, and they don't have any patio furniture. So sometimes we're bringing larger scale items in, some of which we might have an inventory. Sometimes we engage suppliers to furnish those large scale items. Just depends. And then another opportunity is ever occasionally we might have a vacant property altogether. And for one reason or another, the sheer volume of what needs to be accomplished might exceed capacity or reason. And certainly challenges over the last couple of years of bringing a lot of things into a residence was a challenge during COVID. So digital staging has become quite popular too. And it's unique because it gives us a super wide range of palette of styles. So if we really want to stage something in a very contemporary way, or we want to do a modern farmhouse, we of course can't carry inventory as wide spectrum as all of that. So digital staging is a great way for us to give flair and flavor to a property with literally limitless options for design style. So it's fun. So although it doesn't translate in photos, one of the staging elements we consider is scent. And sometimes, and I know I do in my own home, I like candles and I like air fresheners. But generally when we're marketing a property, those things aren't good elements. Scents tend to be too strong, and if a house is shut for any period of time, they tend to be intense. So we do things like a bowl of lemons, something like that has a slow release natural scent. It actually cleans the air, and particularly during the summer months. In the spring and summer months, it's fresh and appealing. We make certain that pet odors can be a problem. Certainly evidence of a pet should be removed. We'll move dog beds and bowls and things like that. But we learned some tips and tricks, and things like whole coffee beans in a container slid underneath the sofa or whatnot. They're great odor absorbers. So it's not just the visual look. Obviously, it's how that property is going to show when somebody walks through it. That's also critical. Staging when we have a homeowner residence is really a collaborative effort. We'll go in and create a staging plan with the homeowner. That process of them maybe removing some personal articles, doing some closet clean out, the things that most people expect, is kind of level one. Level two is when we start coming in with accessories and art, soft goods, the things that we've already talked about. We start bringing those in, inventorying, and then we actually start physically staging. And that physical staging is generally moving around and about, shuffling sometimes, those key items, those foundational items, sofas and chairs and rugs and things like that the homeowner might already have. Sometimes we've talked about removing them, and if that's the case, if there's some furnishings to be removed, we're going to have the homeowner do that before we arrive. Then staging can take 2 days, generally I would say. Most assignments can be completed in 2 days. And at the end of that, we'll move right into photography. So we'll spend a couple of hours doing all the photography and media at one time. And then of course, the staging items remain, right? Because we haven't started the showing process yet. So while we are defining our marketing pieces and prepping for market, all of those items stay, and through the course of showings, generally we need to remove items when we're under contract and the buyer has satisfied their option period and we feel confident about the sale. Then it's time for us to inventory all that back out so that the homeowner can prepare for their move. There's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of great data out there, evidence demonstrating the evidence of value, increased value for staging, and we can go over that with each and every client. Because we're so convinced that most properties require some level of staging. Sometimes they don't need a 2-day staging event, but they need some preparation. Because again, as we talked about, the difference between living and listing is evident in most everyone's home, right? That favorite blanket of yours that's laying on the couch, that's your favorite snuggle buddy, is probably not going to stay on the couch, as an example, when you go to list the house, right? So we all need a little bit of fluffing. And so because we're so convinced that this is an integral part of a successful sale and marketing of a property, we include that in our package. If it's within our wheelhouse and something that we can tackle, we have inventory, or we can easily acquire inventory to satisfy a staging solution, then that's just part of our service to a client. Every once in a while, the client needs some big pieces. Again, an unfurnished room, a critical living space that needs a new sofa or something like that. We don't keep those things in inventory, as you can imagine. We'd have to have a lot of it. So we do have staging partners. We have suppliers that we can go to for those kinds of items. And normally there's some cost associated with it. And we just tackle each of those conversations as they might need with every client. And then again, sometimes we're able to satisfy even those situations with digital work. It really just depends on the property. This is Jackie at the Jackie Group. I hope I taught you something that you didn't already know about staging. If you've got questions, you can ask them below. Subscribe, follow us along, and follow our staging assignments. We'd love to share it with you.